A shakeup in Chicago politics as usual. For the first time in the city's history, voters force a runoff election. Mayor Emanuel finds himself defending his vision for the city.
It's about the future of the city of Chicago, and that's what's on the ballot.
Against Cook County Commissioner Chuy Garcia.
This will be a competitive race.
Tonight, their plan to protect the city from debt and violence. Chicago's mayoral debate on Fox 32 starts now.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the Fox 32 mayoral debate. I'm Jeff Herndon.
And I'm Dawn Hasbrook. For the next hour, the two men vying to be Chicago's next mayor will answer questions about why they are the best man to lead the city.
First, Fox 32 political editor Mike Flannery will question the candidates.
And then Mayor Rahm Emanuel and Commissioner Chuy Garcia will fire off their own questions to each other.
And finally, they will answer your questions, the ones you posed on our Facebook page.
Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question, followed by a 30-second rebuttal. Debate moderator Mike Flannery will have some leeway to allow for further discussion on any given topic.
We turn it over now to our political editor Mike Flannery. Let the debate begin. Mike?
Well, Jeff and Dawn, for the next half hour, we will focus on issues that are key to the success and safety and the future of our city of Chicago. We would like to thank you, Mayor Rahm Emanuel, and you, Commissioner Chuy Garcia, for joining us here tonight and facing these questions. Let's start with the Chicago Public Schools. Mr. Mayor, by a prior agreement, you're going to receive the first question. They face, the Chicago Public School System, $1 billion or more shortfall going into the next school year, next fall. The Chicago Teachers Union is already raising the specter of a possible strike. Should parents be lining up babysitters now?
No, because I believe as we can work through all the issues, there's no need for that, because as in my record, we have actually worked through a number of agreements with labor leaders that are a win-win for the city of Chicago as well as for the members to put the interests of the city forward. And I believe now that our kids have a full school day and a full school year, no longer the shortest, every child has a full day of kindergarten, that we can work through the issues by making sure that our principals, our teachers, and our kids go first. And they're the priority of what we have to do. We'll work through the issues. We have plenty of time. And even before we get there, we have a full school year to make sure that our kids are still advancing educationally, and we're doing what's necessary, Mike, to make sure that they get a great education. We're going to work through all those issues. We shouldn't be distracted from our priority, which is our children, their education. They don't get a do-over, and all of us as adults have a responsibility to make sure that the time remaining in the school year is used for our kids' education.
Commissioner.
So 4 years ago, the mayor said he would improve our education system, and 4 years later, it's only gotten worse in terms of the finances of the public school system. He's appointed the leadership of the school system, its president. He promoted the vice president, made him president of the Board of Education, and that's been the leadership that we've had. That's why over the past 2 weeks, there have been 2 downgrades of the school bonds. A lack of confidence by investors and money managers in terms of how the schools have been managed. The other board member that he appointed, that he stands behind, is someone who's been profiting from the school system. Her company has done lots of business with Chicago schools, has made significant profits over that time. That's the type of failed leadership that is not conducive to our schools moving forward. It lacks transparency. It's riddled with conflicts of interest, with questions about what is the real state of affairs there, and whether the children's education comes first.
Commissioner, let's stay right there, and we're going to stay right with the school system. You, of course, say that you were persuaded by the president of the Teachers Union, Karen Lewis, to run for mayor. I was asked if I would run. Right, but it was not something you were considering until she fell ill, and
Yes.
then asked you to run. In light of that, and in light of the fact that so much of your campaign is being supplied by the teachers and other government employees,
By many other unions.
so how do you close that, largely government employee unions, how do you close that budget shortfall? You've talked a bit about City Hall's finances, as the mayor has. Let's talk about the public schools, which are even in a worse crisis.
Yes, and let's talk about the failed leadership. Let's talk about...
Well, can I ask?
Yes,
You've talked about
Point
that.
number one.
Your
point
plan, sir.
Okay, first, audit the school's finances, the Chicago Public Schools finances. We need to know where revenues are going, what kind of expenditures are going on. The privatization deals that have taken place there also are called into question per reporting by Chicago newspapers in terms of people getting contracts who in turn kick money into the mayor's reelection fund. When these types of patterns exist in government and public service, yes.
I don't think there's anything like $1 billion there.
No,
in anything you mentioned.
Once we have audited what will be there, we're going to have to go to the legislature to figure out how much money we can get to balance the budget. And two, we're going to have to sit with the stakeholders there, with the partners, to look at the books and share with them the state of the finances and how we move forward. Difficult decisions, hard decisions are going to have to be made, but I can tell you one thing: I don't have the animosity because I'm not, don't have the history of confrontation to be able to sit with the stakeholders and arrive at reasonable solutions because I am collaborative in my approach.
Mr. Mayor.
You've asked two questions to my opponent to give you a clear answer. All he's done is attack. Let's deal with the problem as is, and that is that the $1 billion deficit, 3/4 of it are pension related. In 1997, when he was down in the legislature, he was warned by both the teachers and CPS, don't cast a vote that would create a holiday that would actually ruin the pension system. 10 years of non-payments. The problem that we have today started in 1997, the ball rolling down the road. It's very clear what has to happen. Chicago is the only municipality that pays twice for teachers' pensions. One for our teachers, and the one for Schaumburg, Naperville, Peoria, downstate, everybody other teachers.
That requires action by the General
Assembly. That's right,
Yes.
and it's been very clear. I've been forthright with the leadership as well as the governor. This crisis now, this dual taxation of Chicago taxpayers has to end. We have to have a single system so it works for everybody, because Chicago taxpayers cannot be taxed twice for teacher's pension and only get a benefit of one teacher.
How would you close the $1 billion shortfall there?
Well, 3/4 of $1 billion of that billion comes there. Now, in my record, I've also in the last 4 years taken 3/4 of $1 billion out of the central office. There's more reforms to be done, but to be forthright with people, there's not another $1 billion of reforms. What there has to end is a dual taxation of Chicago taxpayers. They are not an ATM machine for the teachers in Naperville, Schaumburg, Kenilworth, Peoria, all the other cities and municipalities. And you know, because you've been part of it, you've observed this, for 40 years this problem has existed. It's come to a crisis point, which then means we have now the political will to solve it.
So, Commissioner, you and the mayor both say that you'd go to Springfield for help.
Yes.
But you guys know Governor Rauner's budget indicates the cupboard is bare. There won't be help coming from Springfield, especially to the tune of 3/4 of $1 billion or $1 billion. So what's your solution if there is no money from Springfield?
Then we have to sit down with the partners here, with the Chicago Teachers Union, with the other unions that are involved, and have a candid conversation about how we move forward.
What does that mean?
That will entail looking at a host of revenue options. That may entail some very difficult medicine that everyone will have to share, but we need to
So you're going to be able to turn around and ask the teachers union that has been the heart of your campaign?
We're going to ask everyone.
Cuts?
Mike, don't just mention the teachers union. Mention the truck drivers. Mention the nurses. Mention the Teamster workers who are supporting my campaign. They want to see the city move in a different direction. Don't just paint me as being responsive to one union. I have many unions that are supporting me and many working men and women. But the issue is that we're worse off 4 years after he took the reins of the school system, and only with more conflicts of interest and pay-to-play politics going on at the school board, and that undermines our credibility in Springfield for making sound decisions.
Mr. Mayor.
First of all, let's be clear about something. 4 years ago, I mean, you've been around Chuy for 30 years. 4 years ago, 4 out of 10 kids were dropping out of high school. In 2 years' time, 8 out of 10 will be graduating. We used to have the shortest school day, the shortest school year in America. We now added 2.5 more years educational time in the classroom to our kids. My opponent disagrees with a full day.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
You're
lying again. I don't disagree with the extension of the school day. You extended the school day but failed to fund it so that kids can actually benefit from it. And you cut back on libraries and you force other people, you increase the class size in many schools.
You'll have a chance in a moment.
Let me just finish. You had an ad up opposing it. Now every child also in the city of Chicago has a full day of kindergarten. Half our kids used to get a half day. Parents would running from work, pick kids up, get them off to daycare, and have to run back to work. we ended all those injustices that was put on our kids by design.
Mr. Mayor,
and
can I
we're
ask,
finally
though,
we have the highest ACT scores, highest attendance, highest graduation in the system. Our work is not done. Going forward, universal pre-K, and if you earn a B average in high school, community college will be free from now on. Those are the reforms to make sure
But, Mr.
everybody
Mayor,
has a chance at a great future.
And you'll both have closing statements where you can recite your achievements. But if I could just reiterate the question, if Springfield doesn't give us any money, and in fact takes money away, how do we close that shortfall?
Yeah, well, first of all, the governor said that he was going to increase educational funding. And I told him up front, we're going to keep you to your word, and so you can't break that pledge. Second, I also believe, and it's fundamental, that you have to end this dual taxation of Chicago taxpayers. When you pay property taxes in the city of Chicago, you support our teachers' pension and also CPS. When you pay your income taxes, you're actually supporting all the teachers' pensions in the rest of the state. That dual, and we're the only city that pays that, our taxpayers. That has to end. We're carrying Naperville, Schaumburg, all the other cities and municipalities' teachers' pension. Therefore, the state has a responsibility to all teachers, and actually they understand now because of the crisis. Otherwise, you're going to affect the classroom. Everything we've done for 4 years is to make sure, Mike, that we've kept cuts away from the classroom. This now has come to a point that there has to be fundamental reforms, and if everybody gives a little, nobody has to give too much.
We're going to come back to finances in a few moments, but let me switch gears for a minute. Okay. Commissioner, what were you thinking? I know you now support the Obama Library using Park District land, but when you came out against it initially, what were you thinking?
Mike, let me represent my own positions. First of all, I never opposed the Obama Presidential Library.
But
Why?
using
because,
parkland.
because
You
I served with President Obama in the Illinois legislature. We worked on a foundation board in Chicago. We both come out of community organizing. What I said was I expressed concerns initially over building it on parkland. I think we need to protect parkland. And when the issue became whether Chicago would get it or not, I said, of course I support it. It was in my original statement. I said, whichever site is chosen by the folks making the decision, I will support. There were 2 applications pending. There still are. Whatever the decision is, I will support, including it building on parkland for this exception, because I don't want to lose the library.
What about the Lucas Library proposed for just south of Soldier Field there?
Which library?
The George Lucas Library.
No, you mean the museum.
I'm sorry. Yes, the museum.
The monument to Darth Vader, I oppose. I don't think that it should be because citizens of Chicago have not weighed in on this. They haven't been asked. You don't make those decisions by fiat. You're not the king of the city. You have to consult people. It is one of the most precious pieces of lakefront property in the city. We ought to have consultation. There are other sites available. I hope the Lucas Museum comes to Chicago. I just don't think it's a good idea to put it there. And if you want to put it there, ask the voters.
Mr. Mayor?
2 things. I think in building a city, creating jobs, requires leadership that's clear, concise, and consistent. We disagreed in the primary, or in the first election. I was clear that the Presidential Library should be in the city of Chicago. Clear and consistent all the time, because I knew how important it was for economic jobs, growth in the city of Chicago. And it also be clear that it's either can be on the south side of the city of Chicago, the west side of the city of Chicago, but it cannot be on the upper west side of Manhattan. That position is
you
new.
now agree. You seem both seem to be on the same page.
No, but if you're having recruited jobs, Mike, here, companies here, they bet on leadership that's consistent. And if you're not consistent, you can actually put all that economic gains and job at risk.
So what about the Lucas Museum? He says you're acting like a king.
No, well, we ran a process, a lot of town hall meetings, etc. That was going to go to San Francisco. Thousands of jobs, economic development, all the museums in the area support it. And we're creating 50 acres of parkland at Northerly Islands. It is going to be a unique campus that brings not only people educationally and to the city of Chicago, economic gains to the city of Chicago. It's a unique campus outside of the Smithsonian, once in a place in the world, and I'm glad it's not in San Francisco. I'm glad it's based in Chicago, and we're going to create open space doing that.
Speaking of jobs, Commissioner, is the president of the Operating Engineers Union, Local 150, right when he says that his members fear that if you're elected, the construction boom downtown will slow down? Because you seem to imply that the city shouldn't be focused on downtown, but should be spending money elsewhere.
he is mistaken. I think he's being partisan. He has not endorsed my campaign.
No, he's endorsed the mayor.
Yes, clearly. I want to work to continue to have a strong downtown. I want jobs to continue to be created in the city of Chicago. I want to see local economic development in Chicago neighborhoods. Why? We cannot continue to live in a city where people draw their own conclusions about a tale of two cities. Great prosperity in the central business district and no prosperity in Chicago neighborhoods. We need to ensure that there's sustainable development. Chicago must grow its population. It can't all occur downtown. It needs to occur in the neighborhoods in Chicago. That's when we will have sustainable development. The neighborhoods have been starved, especially over the past 4 years. I want to see that type of building occur in the neighborhoods while we maintain a strong downtown that has all of the essential things that great cities need.
This is a very important question, and I want to thank. I'm proud to get the support of 60 separate unions because of all the economic development, job creation we're creating in the city of Chicago. You don't pit one side against the other because that's not how we grow a city. We have a central business district that's vibrant and growing and creating jobs and economic opportunity. Companies are coming to the city of Chicago. That gives us the resources to invest in neighborhoods. Let's take the neighborhood of Little Village that Chuy's represented for 30 years. Working with community leaders, I finally closed the coal plant that was there spewing pollution. I also ended up creating.
You single-handedly closed it?
No, I said working with community.
People worked on it for 10 years before you were ever elected. When you were still in Washington.
I'm gonna get this done. I'm gonna be actually. Let me just. I haven't interrupted you. Let me just try to finish. Right next to it, we took an old polluted site, a brownfield, and created a 22-acre park in the city, in the Silatex facility. That's a big park in Little Village. 20 miles in Little Village have now been paved. 4 schools that used to have a half day of kindergarten now have a full day of kindergarten. And at the library in Little Village, we put a teacher in every library across the city of Chicago to help kids on homework after school. Having a vibrant, growing city, a world-class city, has a vibrant central business district like every other one, and it gives you the resources to make investments in Little Village and other neighborhoods throughout the city of Chicago, so you have a neighborhood families can raise their kids in, and a commercial life like in Little Village, where we're now going to work on the parking issue because people from around the Midwest come there to buy the goods and services that are there.
Commissioner Garcia, real quickly, a rebuttal.
Before the mayor ever moved into Chicago, right before he ran for mayor, people worked in Little Village, in Pilsen, and in Canaryville and Bridgeport to close the coal-burning plants. They protested, they testified, they signed petitions, they educated the communities. That's in part why they were closed. 2, the park that he claims credit for, he simply went there to cut a ribbon. Who made it happen? Community activists in the Little Village community, community organizers. Alderman Cardenas worked to make that park a reality. He's simply claiming credit because he got to go and cut a ribbon. That's not how you build communities in Chicago. He's grandstanding and he's trying to take credit for work that he didn't do.
The Sierra Club has endorsed my candidacy because I actually, working with community leaders, finally shut those two plants.
And most of the money that came for the park came from the state. That's the other reality.
You
didn't give money for the park. Come on, Ron.
Gentlemen, let's
wait a second. I want to answer this. The park, just 1 second. The 22 acres, it's a density area. There's no open space. We created a park that people talked about and got the work done. Part of being mayor is getting the resources to finish the job and help a neighborhood become thriving by investing in parks, schools, libraries, and the transportation system, so you have the foundation for a vibrant community. That's what happened in Little Village.
The neighborhood activists made it happen. They worked on it for 20 years,
Absolutely
including myself.
All right, Commissioner Garcia, you made a
reference.
You made a reference to the mayor just moving back to Chicago just before he ran for mayor. Of course, he'd been in Washington, working at the White House. But you've also suggested that he's not of the neighborhoods, not of Chicago. What do you mean by that?
By that, I mean he's engaged in promising Chicago improvements that he's broken. So there's a pattern of broken promises, of bad choices, and wrong priorities over the past 4 years. The massive school closings are one example of how out of touch he is. You asked me a question, Mike. 2,
but I've heard you suggest that perhaps because he went to high school in the suburbs, as City Clerk Susanna Mendoza did, out in the southwest suburbs, and then after that moved
she's
back.
lived in Chicago for quite a long time. What I'm saying
but
is
her
that
her family, like the mayor's, her family moved out of Chicago as she got into school. She went to Bolingbrook, then came back. Is that a negative? Is that bad? Does that mean he shouldn't be mayor?
I'm saying that the mayor doesn't listen to people. He doesn't get around to the neighborhoods. He doesn't engage people in a natural fashion. It's about the press release, the next press release, taking credit for things like he just did, projects that he wasn't involved in. He simply came there because it's the courteous thing to do, to come and invite whoever the mayor is to cut ribbons. That's what I'm saying. He's not rooted in the day-to-day life of Chicago communities. That's all that I know. I've lived in Chicago for 50 years. I've grown up in neighborhoods. I have neighborhood networks and relationships. That's why they've responded to my campaign. They're looking for an alternative, and that's why in a 5-month period, Chicago is in a runoff, unprecedented, and that's in part why there are 19 members of the City Council up for runoffs also.
Mr. Mayor.
Well, I'm not sure what the question is, but I think a growing city, Mike, doesn't pit one part of the city against the other. I'm proud that we now are #1 in job creation of any big city in America. I'm proud that we're also #1 2 years in a row in corporate relocations. I'm proud that we're also the leading city where people are investing in and families are moving back in.
All right.
Because what we've done is make sure that we're going to not only have the economic growth and job creation, so we can invest in neighborhoods throughout the city of Chicago, like Little Village, like what we're doing in Brownsville.
Let's move on.
Like
I got a question about mental health.
Wait a second. This was a question about. We'll go with the mental health, but I want to be clear. All parts of the city of Chicago working together can make sure that if we invest in our kids, invest in our neighborhoods, schools, parks, libraries, every part of the city of Chicago is going to be a foundation and have a foundation
Mayor.
to raise a child and have a business.
As you know, a huge percentage, some days more than half of the people arrested by the Chicago Police Department show up at the Cook County Jail and are diagnosed. Initial diagnosis is that they have a mental illness. Some of them have severe mental illness. What is your plan to address that piece of the violence and crime?
That's a very good question. As you know, when I was both a congressman, I worked with Congressman Patrick Kennedy and finally getting what is called mental health parity. So insurance companies can't cut off people when they're in the middle of getting the help they need mental health. When I became mayor, our mental health entities here in the city of Chicago had lost 90% of the state funding because of how badly they were managed. So like other parts of the budget, I went to reform it and make changes.
And you closed 6 clinics.
No, we added more clinics through the federally qualified entities, and we added a first new benefit ever, psychiatric care. You do speak to a larger problem, but we're now restoring that funding because we've actually cleaned up a mess we had inherited. We had lost, the city of Chicago, 90% of its funding from the state because of how poorly it was being managed. We actually, working with federally qualified entities, have actually added more spaces throughout the city of Chicago, and more importantly, we've added a new benefit called psychiatric care because I believe firmly that mental health benefits and the care that comes with it is essential to help people that need that
Garcia.
service.
Mike, here's the fact. Bad choice to close the mental health clinics. He argued that there were savings of $2.7 million. The fact is that he increased the budget after he shut the clinics down by over $2 million and added more administrators to the Department of Health. 3, many of these patients, because they don't get the treatment that they need in the neighborhoods where the clinics were located, wind up at Cook County Jail. And they help to overwhelm the Cermak Hospital, the Cook County Cermak Hospital at the jail. Another clear example of bad choices made by a mayor who doesn't understand the impact of his policy decisions on everyday Chicagoans. I will restore funding to those clinics and reopen them because they need to be reopened and they need to be in neighborhoods where they used to be.
Okay, so I've got a question for you then, Mr. Garcia, because reopening the clinics may be a very excellent idea. It's going to cost money. Hiring 1,000 police officers may be an excellent idea. It's going to cost over $100 million. You have, last night for the first time, I heard you say, in a sense, me too, to the mayor's idea of expanding the sales tax to apply to new services that are now not taxed. Beyond that, how will you pay for these things on the city side of the finances? We've discussed the public school finances. You don't seem to like the idea, the mayor's idea, for a new Chicago casino that would be devoted to, the revenues would go to the pension funds.
Mike, first of all, in my financial plan that we published 2 weeks ago, it's on my website, 18 pages long, We lay out a new approach to managing the city's finances as well as the 3 other sister agencies, the Chicago Public Schools, the Park District, as well as city colleges of Chicago.
If I may say, there are not a lot of specifics in there, Commissioner.
Those come on the tax bill. That's what people get when they have to pay their taxes. 2, yes, I said I will hire 1,000 additional police officers to engage in community policing. We begin by taking half of the overtime that is currently budgeted in the city budget to pay for that, to begin paying for that, to put officers in the academy, train them, officers that look like the communities that they patrol, to make safer, to build real relationships of trust and mutual respect. All of these things will entail revenue. My approach to dealing and generating revenue will be first doing an audit of the things of the revenues and where they're going at the city and CPS, and then 2, looking at a host of revenue options. Yesterday, I talked about some of them
Okay.
as a
so
beginner.
the sales tax, is
The
it
sales
essentially
tax,
the mayor's
no,
same
it's not
idea?
The mayor. No, I qualified that. My sales tax components will not be regressive on low income and working people. We'll do things that upper end people, higher income earners will
Like what?
will sustain.
What does that mean in real terms?
Like first storage, like a luxury tax on people who are able to buy boats and luxury items like that. We're moving in that direction. I put those out there to show people that we've been thinking about sources of revenue. Am I prepared to unveil a whole host of revenue measures? No. Why? I want to see the books open. I want to share that with Chicagoans. We are preparing a whole menu of revenue sources, and I'm not opposed. I'm not in favor of moving a casino off the table at this point. Why? Because of the fiscal mess that Mayor Emanuel has created for the city of Chicago that has us in a financial freefall, and that's why the rating agencies have given him an F in terms of his performance as a financial steward of the city of Chicago.
Mayor, go ahead.
4 years in a row, we've balanced a budget without a property tax, without gimmicks, and 4 years in a row, we put money back into the rainy day fund and invested in our neighborhoods and our kids. In each budget, the Civic Federation of Lawrence Massall has said we have done the responsible thing of putting our financial house in order. And what you heard here is a clear choice and difference. I've been very specific and consistent how to make sure that we have a reform and invest strategy. What the commissioner offered.
Could I ask, though, what are the new services that are now not taxed that you would tax with the sales tax?
I've been very clear, as you said in your own question, Mike, and you said that 5 years ago. I said we're going to have a progressive sales tax that can lower the rate by expanding to services. That's what you work with Springfield about. That's how you would get it done. And I've been
give us some services you'd exclude and some services you would cover
I'll give
and
you,
now tax.
Right now, you have a single mother buy school supplies. She pays a tax. You join a club, you don't pay a tax. I think that's wrong. That's a clear example of what I think is what is wrong with the sales tax. And we have one of the highest sales tax in the country. And if you actually expand the base, because it was done 30 years ago, you would actually get the revenue and you can lower the rate. But let me be clear about the difference here. I've laid out a specific plan every year on doing a budget. My opponent said that after the election he'll appoint a commission. You don't know who serves on it. You don't know what's on the table, off the table. That means what he will do, which is clear, is force, if that commission comes back and says, we're going to cut 1,000 cops.
Right.
We're going to double the property tax. We're going to
time.
also double the
Commissioner
parking
Garcia,
tax.
go
That's
ahead.
the wrong approach
My
because
turn.
nobody is accountable.
Mayor, my turn. 4 years ago, he said he would put the fiscal house in order. He hasn't. He's given us 4 budgets that have been balanced on the backs of ordinary Chicagoans. Regressive taxes, red lights, fees, fines, and penalties. He admitted in one of our debates that in the city budget there exists waste, fraud, and inefficiencies. He made that statement. 4 years later, he says the Civic Federation praised his budget. They didn't praise his budget. They said he's indebted Chicagoans for the long haul, that he's engaged in borrowing schemes that are indebting children today who will be forming families 30, 40 years from now. It is unsustainable. They warned him that if he continued that our bonds would be downgraded. Now we've seen that. We've had 4 examples in the last month alone. Chicago's in a financial freefall.
All right, Commissioner.
Wait, Mike, I want to speak clear.
Wait, I was I got the close on that one.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, your campaign ads tell voters that you've made the tough decisions needed to improve the city's finances, yet we've just heard Mr. Garcia, Commissioner Garcia, tick off the downgrade of the city's credit rating. If you've made the tough decisions and improved the city's finances, why the downgrades?
Well, you're not going to in 4 years, you're not going to reverse 40 years of bad politics. That was the best we inherited. When I became a mayor, We had a $600+ million annual deficit. We've cut that to less than 300 and balanced 4 budgets in a row without raising property sales or gas tax. In addition, when I came into be mayor 4 years ago, 4 pensions were out of whack. Today, 2 of them are on their way to meeting their obligations, not hurting the city finances. And because of our actions, the city of Chicago has given the confidence to people to move jobs and companies here. If you make all the pledges that have been just made without the ability to pay for them, companies and jobs will flee the city of Chicago because we'll be bleeding red ink again. We're finally doing the necessary work. We're not done. We have a lot more work to do, but we've actually made the reforms necessary, rejecting the idea of just offering new services you can't pay for, rejecting the idea of just raising taxes, line by line making reforms, line by line making investments in the future, which is why Chicago is finally bringing jobs, families, and businesses back to the city of Chicago.
He talks about all these jobs. Fact of the matter is that Chicago has had one of the slowest recoveries in cities in the entire country. 2, of the jobs that have been created in the Central Business District, few go to Chicagoans in the neighborhoods. That's another fact. That's why people are upset with this administration. That's why people voted for change on February 24th. They keep hearing certain things from this mayor, but they know that they're bearing the brunt of his policies. They're regressive. They affect low-income people, working people, the middle class. People want to go in a different direction. They want to see more equity in Chicago, and they want to see less inequality in the city of Chicago. That's why they did what they did in the last election.
That's why I'm so proud of the fact we're going to raise the minimum wage so work will pay again in the city of Chicago. Why I'm proud of the fact we're going to end the disparity between kids when it comes to early childhood education at kindergarten. Why we're going to go forward. Every child, universal pre-K, starting with 4-year-olds from families in need. And more importantly, you earn a B average. Community college will be free because I want the kids at our community college to compete and win for the jobs that are coming to the city of Chicago.
All right, let's switch
and that's the economic vein, so everybody in the city can gain from the vibrant, growing city.
Let's move to something that has given Chicago a terrible image around the world, the homicides here. They certainly are down from a peak several decades ago. Nonetheless, even as homicides have declined, the number of shootings has gone up. And the number of murders being solved has dropped. Commissioner, WBEZ reported that there's been a 19% decline in the people, detectives, and others who investigate homicides. What should we do about that?
This is, again, the report card that Mayor Emanuel has earned. 10,000 shootings plus 10,500 and counting, almost 2,000 homicides. This is the result of someone who doesn't understand that one of the most important functions of government is to provide for the public safety of citizens. Why did I propose to hire 1,000 additional policemen and women to patrol Chicago streets, to engage in building relationships of trust and mutual respect? Because I understand the urgency. You cannot have a reality like he has, where there are 400 less officers on the payroll in the Chicago Police Department today than there were 4 years ago, and the fact that WBZ reported that there are less homicide investigators. That's why there are so many unsolved murders in Chicago.
Frankly,
this morning, but wait, Mike, this morning I stood with parents, relatives of children who have lost their lives and whose shootings remain unsolved because there has been a 25% reduction in the number of homicide investigators in Chicago. That will not be tolerated.
Yes. But let me, just real quickly.
Sure.
I've talked to homicide detectives. I've talked to cops. A majority of the murders, the killings in Chicago, are gang-related, police claim. In those cases, witnesses, even sometimes those who are shot, don't cooperate with the police. How are they supposed to solve a crime when the guy who's been shot won't even talk to the cops?
People will cooperate with the police department when they develop closer relationships with community residents, with block club leaders,
even a gangbanger,
with everyone. It is possible. If officers are given that assignment, and if we establish a policy of community policing, which I will do, because cities that have embraced it have transformed the police departments. L.A., the former mayor of L.A. is a friend of mine, known him for a long time, improved its police department. It had one of the worst reputations for corruption, for brutality, for abuses etc. When they went to community policing, it improved. They has a whole new, different outlook on things, and community residents cooperate with the police, and crime went down
Mr.
in
Mayor,
LA.
why that
That's the
19%
success.
decline in
Wait,
detectives investigating
Mike,
murders?
the whole point here, look, I visit with families like Dolores Bailey, who lost her son, to make sure that in the lowest moment, they know, not as the mayor, but as a father, they're not going to be alone. Ebony, the same thing. To make sure that Cleo Pendleton. Now, when Chuy was alderman, we've had a 65% reduction in homicide. That's not what's important. We've also had over the last 4 years, as you noted, 4 years, homicides are down. Overall crime is down by 40%.
Why are so few being solved,
But
Mr.
the
Mayor?
key thing is, you just said it in your own question, because a good portion of them are gang-on-gang homicides. And what you need is to make sure you put more police on the street and get kids, guns, and drugs off the street.
Well, why a 19% decline in
Which is why I've been
detectives?
clear about...
Why less detectives, he asked, Mayor?
I'm trying to be respectful of the whole process, so I don't interrupt you. Let me just finish here. The issue is making sure that we have our officers on the street, which is why we've added the 1,000 officers out from behind the desk, put them out on the street, eliminate the roving task force so they could do community policing like Operation Impact Zone, plus up, make sure that 24,000 kids are participating in after-school and summer jobs activities. And fundamental difference is we need to change the gun laws. Because Chicago has a model gun law, but we are not an island. And the gun flows into the city is what's affecting the quality of life in our neighborhoods throughout the city of Chicago. And we have to change those laws.
Are there specific changes, Commissioner, you would make in gun laws?
Well, I've made gun laws at Cook County government. The Protection of Minors Ordinance was authored by me. It requires parents to have security locks, to have guns stored away safely. Another ordinance that I passed requires lost or stolen guns to be reported so that we keep better track of it. I would go to Springfield to work with the legislature to improve gun laws in Illinois because I've lived, I understand the violence in neighborhoods. I live in a neighborhood that's had more than its share. I'm connected with people who've worked to reduce violence in Chicago in many, many neighborhoods. I understand the problem. I will solve the problem because I am a stakeholder in one of those communities.
I want to be really quick. My career was built fighting the NRA, which is why I passed the Brady Bill and the assault weapon ban, and why Chicago today now has a model gun control legislation that other municipalities are following. But the fact is, Chicago's not an island. If you want to go to Indiana or Wisconsin, you can get a gun. You want to go right in the county, those are stores that actually are supplying the bulk of the guns into the city, which is why we need to make the fundamental change. Why every gun lobby, gun control group has endorsed my
real quick question about O'Hare noise. As you know, many of the neighbors around O'Hare, a couple 100,000 of them in the city, up on the north side, northwest side, complain that you haven't met with them, and they don't want those northwest-southwest runways to be torn up. They want operations to resume on those runways, and not all of the operations be on the new runways. Is that realistic, or is that just, are they dreaming?
No, I think O'Hare, while O'Hare is an economic engine, it has to be a good neighbor to the entire part of the city, which is why we've increased the installations of homes. It's why we're putting the machines out for the noise area, and why we've demanded the FAA speed up their study so we can actually make some decisions here. The FAA is in control of it, and which is why I've been clear, they have to get their report done and their work done.
They want to tear up those old runways.
The FAA is, we have to work with the FAA. That's why a mayor has to have the leadership and the capacity to go with the FAA, to tell the FAA they have a responsibility to give us the information and make a decision so we can actually continue to have a vibrant O'Hare, but continue to have a vibrant set of communities that are affected.
Commissioner Garcia, as a rookie mayor, would you have the heft to be able to go to Washington and the White House and tell the FAA, don't tear up those runways?
Mike, as a candidate for the office of mayor, I've shown receptivity, responsiveness to the neighbors around O'Hare. I've gone out there, I've listened to their concerns, to their complaints.
That's
As
true.
a matter of fact,
But
I've also signed...
What about those runways?
Those runways...
That's where the noise comes from.
Right, but the first thing that you do as a mayor is you meet with people, you listen to them, you hear their concerns. If you don't want to do it, you at least send your commissioner of aviation to meet with them.
Now,
Show
I've heard
some
you
respect.
say that you may not be able to do anything.
At least you hear them out. Show some empathy. relate to the people in the neighborhoods. Don't just say, I'm not going to go out there, and don't send your commissioner. I will work with the FAA. I will get the FAA to come out there. There needs to be a new study about the impact of the new runways are having in that community to see if there are new situations that have developed. I've been out there. I've heard the jets come across people's lawns almost. They're intolerable. We ought to do everything we can to let them know that we're doing everything to mitigate the noise.
Look, you have to get an answer for the community, which means demanding the FAA speed up their study. That's how you get the job done.
You go meet with them first.
All right, just a real quick question.
Show some respect.
Quick question. Commissioner, this is the final question. Let me ask about the one job that you had an executive position in, the Enlace Group. You did a lot of good work there,
Yes.
according to accounts from the neighborhood. But the Sun-Times reported the other day, when you left, there was a nearly $500,000 deficit there. Should voters be concerned about that? That you weren't able to balance the budget there?
No, that is a new negative ad that his buddies are putting out.
Well, but the Sun-Times said that's the record,
right.
reflected in the tax returns and the official records.
He has a new ad touting that.
Right.
Fact is
it false?
Yes. When I left,
you didn't leave
Mike,
the tax records
when
show
I
a deficit?
left the organization was in the black. It's one of the healthiest. The other distortion that's made is, and the budget was about $2.9 million, the operating budget. Today's budget is $5 million. That's the distortion.
So what was the
$470,000
deficit?
There were some deficits during the time, particularly during the Great Recession that we experienced. Many organizations struggled through that period, but that was solved, and by the time I left, we were in the black. Many organizations experienced financial difficulties during that time. Sometimes it has to do when revenue arrives in the nonprofit sector. I left an organization that was solid. It continues to be solid. People come to Little Village to learn about the work of Enlace and its pioneering work in violence prevention and in education and after-school programs.
30 seconds, Mr. Mayor. Then we're going to move to the next portion.
Look, being mayor, you have a very big budget, and you got to make the right decisions to be able to lead a city. It's not only about putting a fiscal house in order, it's about giving businesses and companies the confidence to move jobs and the families that want to come to the city of Chicago, so we're a vibrant, growing city. I've balanced 4 budgets in a row without a property tax increase, making sure money goes back into the rainy day fund, and now Chicago's creating jobs and reversing the flow out, and that's what leadership's about, being able to get the job done.
All right, thank you. This is the portion of the program now, gentlemen, where you get to question each other. Commissioner Garcia, you have a question for the mayor.
I asked a question along these lines the last time that we debated Rahm, and that was, do you feel any sense of responsibility for the shootings in Chicago, given that there are less officers today on the police force than 4 years ago, that you reduced the number of homicide investigators in the detective division, and that's why there are so many unsolved murders in the city of Chicago. Do you feel any responsibility for it?
I feel, as I said earlier, and I'm going to repeat, the hardest part of this job is calling the parents who've lost a child or a child's been a victim, to make sure that they're not alone, which is why I've been in their living room, I've also met with them, call them, talk to them all the time, and continue to do that. So they know at their lowest moment that they're not alone, that we'll be there as many tomorrows as it takes. We have added officers in the city of Chicago, back doing community policing, and we've also made sure our kids have a safe place to go by making sure that they have after-school and summer job activities at record numbers, because those are so essential for getting kids right. So they have a mentor, somebody that cares for them, somebody that's going to make sure that they not only get a paycheck, but the values that come with it. And then most importantly, making sure, taking on the NRA and the other gun groups to fight them, to make sure that we have sensible gun laws that do not undermine our communities and neighborhoods. That is what's important for fighting the issue.
Mr. Mayor, you have a question for Commissioner Garcia.
Yes. Chuy, I have disagreed with my supporters in 3 areas. Some don't agree with my position to raise the minimum wage, which we're doing now by 40%. I've told the real estate community that you are going to put $90 million in affordable housing fund so we can build 40,000 new affordable housing units. I've closed a loophole on corporations so they have to pay full freight at their luxury skyboxes. Service employees are your largest supporters by over $1 million. Name 3 things specifically as mayor you would say no to them. I just told you 3 things in which I told my backers I disagree with you. This is what we're going to do, because being mayor requires your ability to tell your friends no when they're wrong. 3 things that you would tell the service employees right now, no, as mayor.
Mr. Rahm, given the state of affairs that you have put the city in over the past 4 years, the fiscal freefall that we're in, I'm going to tell the unions a lot of bad news because you've made the situation so dire. The city is in a terrible state of affairs thanks to your terrible stewardship of our finances. Who is going to be upset when they come to the table and negotiate with me? Probably the unions that are supporting me now. Why are they supporting me now? Because you insulted them. You tried to break the Chicago Teachers Union. You tried to hurt the Service Employees International Union. And it's not the leadership that you tried to hurt, it's real employees. Those are the neighbors in my neighborhood. Those are the people that I see every day when I go to work. Those are the people that I go to work to legislate at the Cook County Board. Those are the people that I care about. Those are the people that I am running for mayor for the city of Chicago.
It's now time to turn to Dawn Hasbrook and Jeff Herndon.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, gentlemen. We will now switch gears to our social media portion of the debate. You at home can participate in this debate by using the hashtag Fox32Debate.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Garcia, you will both have a chance to answer these questions. Our first question is from Evelyn, who asks, when will you get rid of red light cameras? She says they do nothing but suck money from your citizens and have proven to be unsafe. She says, I am an excellent driver, but I actually pay so much attention to the light at one of these corners that I'm ignoring other things. Mr. Mayor, your response to Evelyn.
Yeah, Evelyn, that's why, in fact, from day one, I fired the operator that was had the contract because it was corrupt. I brought a level of transparency, new operation to the system. I've taken down 20% of the red lights where they have proven to be effective from actually reducing side crashes, because I want that technology to focus on making sure that people abide by the law and that we don't have the type of people running red lights, and our police officers are freed up from that activity so they can do what's necessary, which is to fight gangs and guns. And I have reduced and never added a camera and actually reduced 80 of them, 20% of the system. It has to be both there for safety and also for trust.
Commissioner Garcia, your response to Evelyn.
The red light cameras were founded and established on a false lie. They're there to pick people's pockets. They're regressive. They have a devastating impact on ordinary Chicagoans each and every day. That's why Chicagoans have caught on and want them taken down. We looked at this issue. We determined that they need to go. One of the last things that I said I would do, because his former congressional aide is a lobbyist for the company that has the red light cameras, the red light program continues to be shrouded with conflicts of interest and improprieties. They will end on my first day as mayor of the city of Chicago.
All right, our next social media question is about the cost of living.
Again, you will each have 1 minute to answer. Diego Flores writes, I am considering moving out of Chicago. Homes are cheaper in the northwest suburbs versus Chicago. Convince me on why I should stay in Chicago. Commissioner Garcia.
Chicago has many advantages as a location for families. I recognize that we have some significant challenges facing people in the city of Chicago, including the levels of violence in many Chicago communities and schools that need greater equity so that we have good schools everywhere in the city of Chicago. As mayor of the city of Chicago, you have my commitment that the focus in Chicago will be to embrace Chicago neighborhoods, to invest in them strategically, to mobilize community residents to make them better places for everyone. When we have better schools, when we have safer communities and good transportation, it will be an asset to live in the city of Chicago. I need some time to make that happen, but I invite all Chicagoans to participate with me to make Chicago a more livable city and one that will attract growing families as we make it a sustainable city for everyone to live and grow old in.
All right, Mayor Emanuel, your response.
First of all, Chicago is a very vibrant city with great neighborhoods and a great quality of life. And our property taxes, while too high, are actually lower than the suburbs. And also want you to know that now the companies are moving to the city of Chicago, leaving the suburbs. Your commute will be less by staying here in the city of Chicago. And we're going to continue to invest in our schools so you have great neighborhood schools, great public transportation, a vibrant park system, and a quality of life to raise a family, and also as to make the most of your life with your job that you have. We have a great city and a great future if we're willing to do the tough things necessary. And Diego, I want to make sure that you have a place that you can not only buy a home, but raise a family in a great neighborhood that you can be proud of, and also afford to live here, because we're doing the necessary things by going through our budget and making the reforms necessary, like I have over the last 4 years, where we haven't raised our property taxes, haven't raised our sales tax, haven't raised our gas taxes, while making critical investments to the quality of life of the city of Chicago.
All right, gentlemen, some of our Facebook friends paint Chicago as a tale of two cities.
Alan asks, why are the streets on the south side so full of potholes? I drive every day to and from work. Notice the difference when I travel in other areas. Mayor Emanuel.
Alan, that's a great question. And one of the things that I've been clear about when I became mayor, we were paving around about 175 miles, 150 miles a year. We've taken that up. Last year we did 345 miles. Going forward, we're going to repave 300 miles a year, every year. We've done about a quarter of the city. We're going to do the other quarter over the next 4 years, because a paved street is a better street than just filling potholes. As I always said, you just can't fill potholes your way, and every part of the city of Chicago has to be like that, which is why I pointed out earlier that in the Little Village, we've already done in the last 4 years, 20 miles of road have been totally repaved. Those are good roads, not just filling potholes, totally repave them, because every part of the city deserves to have safe, passable, and plowed and paved streets.
All right, Commissioner Garcia.
Under my administration, there will be equity in everything that we'll do. There will be transparency. I will engage communities all over the city of Chicago actively, because I've been doing that most of my life. That has been a part of my life's work. Under my administration, we're going to open the books. We're going to show where improvements are going and where they need to go. We're going to increase participatory budgeting as it relates to many infrastructure improvements in the city of Chicago, because I'm familiar with neighborhoods in Chicago, because I have a vast network of relationships there. I will be a mayor that is responsive to the city's needs, including ensuring that there is equity in the filling of potholes and the provision of other frontline services to all communities in the city of Chicago.
All right, thank you both. Now we want to ask a question about bike lanes of both of you. Lewis asks, why are most two-lane roads being cut down to one lane because of bikes? It will cause more traffic problems. Commissioner Garcia, we'll start with you first on this one.
I've heard people complain at times about bike lanes. I support the network of bike lanes that exist in the city of Chicago. If we seek to expand bike lanes further, we need to consult and engage community residents. That is my approach to doing things. I believe in being inclusive. I believe in hearing people out. And if in certain communities people don't want the bike lanes, we ought to hear them, and we ought to rationalize as to why that may be a good idea. So far, I tend to support most of the bike lanes that have been created in the city of Chicago. It's a way to get people to be more active. It's a way to ensure different modes of transportation in the city of Chicago.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, there's a place we finally agree, right there. I have supported expanding our bike lanes because first and foremost it's about safety and then jobs and economic growth. By separating cars from bike lanes, and prior to the expansion we had a problem where bikes were running in between cars and creating more accidents. Separating bikes and cars creates actually the type of safety you want. Bikers have to observe the laws just like people driving. And in addition to that, we now have a vibrant tech scene in the city of Chicago we never had before, because the bike system has allowed us to recruit people to the city and companies to the city because it's part of an active transportation system. So while first and foremost it was about safety, it's been helped us create a vibrant, it's been a condition and a contributor to creating a vibrant tech scene, which has brought 40,000 jobs to the city of Chicago, and we're going to continue to make the improvements we have to in our transportation system as a whole, not just bikes, but also mass transit, because that's one of the key factors to allowing the city of Chicago to be creating the jobs here in the city and a vibrant tech scene, a healthcare scene that's going to make sure that the city of Chicago, everybody from every part of the city can actually get to work by either road, bike, bus, or train, and that makes Chicago a city that companies and jobs want to come to.
All right, Mayor Emanuel and Commissioner Garcia, we thank you for your candid answers.
We'd like to send it back over to Mike now for closing statements. Mike?
Jeff and Dawn, thank you. By prior agreement, Mayor Emanuel and Commissioner Garcia will each have 2 minutes to give voters their final thoughts on why they should elect the candidates on April 7th. We ask, gentlemen, we ask each of you to respect the other and not to interrupt in this part of the debate. Mr. Mayor, by prior agreement, you have the first closing statement.
Mike, thank you for sponsoring this debate. Chuy, thank you for being here. 4 years ago, Chicago had come to a brink. We were bleeding red ink, and we were, more importantly, bleeding families, jobs, and companies that were leaving the city of Chicago. We rolled up our sleeves and went to work, balancing 4 budgets in a row without a property sales or gas tax, investing in our children. And because of the hard decisions and the willingness to step up and not kick the can down the road, but do what was necessary, Chicago is now, families are moving back into our city, jobs are coming back, and companies are coming back at record numbers. We have so much more work to do. From a full-day kindergarten, we're now going to have universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds. From the full school day and the full school year and a community college system focused on the jobs and careers that are coming to the city of Chicago, we're going to ensure that if you earn a B average in high school, community college will be free. And we're going to raise the minimum wage so work pays in the city of Chicago. No parent should ever again have to work, raise a child in poverty. We want to make sure that work pays again in the city of Chicago and that everybody together has a chance to succeed going forward. And we're going to work to continue to do that. As Yogi Bear said, when you get to a fork in the road, take it. Chicago's at that fork. One of us is going to be mayor on April 8th. Being able there to make the tough decisions, show the leadership necessary, be able to face up to our challenges and continue to make the investments necessary to build this great city. I ask for your vote, and more importantly than your vote, I ask for your continued love and passion for the city, and working together, we can continue to make Chicago, the great city is, even greater for our children. Thank you, Mike.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Mike, I want to thank Fox and the Better Government Association for giving us the opportunity to discuss the future of the city of Chicago with the voters. You know, in one of his ads recently, the mayor said that sometimes he rubs the people the wrong way because of his passion. But that's not why people on February 24th voted for change in the city of Chicago. They voted for change because they're tired of the broken promises, they're tired of the bad choices, and they're tired of the wrong priorities of this administration. Because I come from Chicago neighborhoods and all of my life has been dedicated to improving Chicago neighborhoods, I will be a mayor that will be inclusive in my approach to creating, to addressing the fiscal challenges that we're facing in the city of Chicago, and truly through transparency, putting the fiscal house in order. 2, I will be a mayor that through a collaborative approach will ensure that there are good schools in neighborhoods everywhere in the city of Chicago. I will be a mayor that will work with community residents and the Chicago Police Department to make neighborhoods safer by bringing restorative justice, by investing in young people, in particular in neighborhoods everywhere in Chicago. My collaborative, inclusive approach seeks to ensure that we move Chicago together forward. I want to be mayor of the city of Chicago for all its people. I ask everyone to come out and vote on Tuesday, April 7th, and to vote for change, to vote for Jesus Chuy Garcia as your next mayor.
Commissioner Garcia, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. We appreciate your taking the time. Hopefully this has been informative for the people, voters who have tuned in. We should remind those watching who live in the city of Chicago and are registered that early voting is already underway from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, Monday through Saturday. There will be early voting at 51 locations throughout the city, including at 69 West Washington downtown at the Chicago Board of Election Commissioners office. On Sunday, on this Palm Sunday, there will be from 9 to 3 p.m. Early voting downtown and at several locations out in the neighborhoods. It concludes on Saturday, April 4th. We toss now back to Jeff and Dawn.
All right, Mike Flannery, thank you very much. And thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Thank you, Mayor Emanuel, for participating tonight. And thank you for joining us for this Fox 32 News special Chicago's mayoral debate.
And as a reminder, we want you to continue to use the hashtag Fox32Debate so we can see what you post on social media. We will be back in 10 seconds with a half-hour post-debate special breaking down the promises made in tonight's debate. Thank you for watching.